Volume of a rectangular prism. Before we can really begin to solve any problems with volume, we need to know exactly what it is. So in the top left-hand corner, we're going to write the definition of volume. Volume is the amount of space inside a three-dimensional figure. When would you use volume? To find how much something can hold. For example, how much space is in an aquarium? A non-example would be, how much space on the floor an aquarium covers? A three-dimensional figure has length, width, and height. A prism is a three-dimensional figure with two parallel bases that are congruent figures. In a rectangular prism, which is what we're working with today, the bases are congruent rectangles. Volume is the amount of space inside a three-dimensional figure. It is measured in cubic units, which can be written using abbreviations of the unit and an exponent of 3. For example, units cubed, inches cubed, and so on. The volume, V, of a rectangular prism is the product of its length, width, and height. So that means the formula to find the volume of a rectangular prism is volume equals length times width times height. Determine the volume of the rectangular prism. Well, first we want to write the formula. Volume equals length times width times height. Make sure you use a lowercase cursive L for the length, because otherwise it looks like a 1, and that's just no bueno. So we need a lowercase cursive L. Now, just like every other time we've done area or volume, we're going to label the dimensions of our figure in the picture. The length is 5 feet. The length is what goes on the front from side to side. Okay, then we have the width right here. That's 20.25 feet. The width goes from the front to the back. And then we have the height, which goes up and down. And the height on this rectangular prism is 6 feet. So now that we know what dimension is what on our prism, we can plug in the numbers into our formula. So we're still going to write V equals, because that's what we're finding, the volume. We're going to replace the L for length with 5. We'll replace the W for width with 20.25, and we will replace the H for height with 6. And now we can solve. Remember, according to order of operations, if it's multiplication, we're just going to go from left to right. So I'm going to do 5 times 20.25 first. Why don't you go ahead and do that on your own? Press pause, and then when you're done, press play to check. So I got 101.25. So now we're going to write volume equals 101.25 times 6. And we need to multiply again to get our final answer. So again, I want you to do this on your own. Press pause to work it out, and then press play to check. So when I multiplied that out, I got 607 50 hundredths, and that final 0 is not really necessary. It doesn't change the value. So I'm just going to drop this last 0 right here. So we have 607.5, or 607 5 tenths, and then we need our units, which are feet, and because it's volume, we're going to do cubic feet, so we have a little 3 up there. So that is our answer. Determine the volume of the rectangular prism. Again, first thing we need to do is write the formula, length times width times height, and we need to label the length, the width, and the height on our prism. Remember, length is from side to side on the front, the width goes from front to back, and then the height is vertical, up and down. So we can replace the L with 10, we can replace the W with 4, and the H with 6. So from this point on, I want you to go ahead and do this on your own, and we will check in class tomorrow. Write and solve an equation to determine the missing dimension of the prism. Well, again, the first thing we need to do is write the formula. Volume equals length times width times height. And then it's always a good idea to go in and label the dimensions of our prism. So the length is 6, the width is 4.9, and we don't know the height. So the height is the missing dimension. That's what we're going to be solving for H. And then it also tells us the volume is 102.9 meters cubed, or cubic meters. So when we do this problem, we're actually going to replace the V with 102.9 because that is the volume. The volume equals the length, which is 6, times the width, which is 4.9, times the height. So the first thing we need to do, keeping in mind that our ultimate goal is to get the H by itself, we need to multiply 6 times 4.9. So go ahead and pause the video to do that on your own, and then press play to check. I got 29.4 when I multiplied, so we're just going to rewrite our equation 102.9 equals 29.4 H, which means 29.4 divided by H. And remember, our ultimate goal is to solve for the height, for H, which means we need to get the H by itself on one side. So I need to do the opposite operation. If it's 29.4 times H, then we need to divide both sides by 29.4. So go ahead and pause the video, see if you can get the answer, and then press play to check. When I divided 102.9 by 29.4, I got 3.5. So that means the height is 3.5, but we need to label it with our units. So if we look back at the illustration of the prism, I see M for meters. That means the height is 3.5 meters. Alrighty, now for one completely on your own. You need to write and solve an equation to determine the missing dimension of the prism. Remember, you need to label your dimensions in the figure, in the picture, write your formula, replace the variables with the numbers that you know, and then solve for the unknown. Remember, your ultimate goal is to get the one variable that you're looking for on one side by itself. So good luck. We'll check in class with your groups when we return.